Hey everyone, today I want to talk to you about stuff you can breed in 20-gallon aquariums. Now, I'm in front of some 40-gallon aquariums here, and I've mostly had 20 gallons for breeding kind of in the store and in old fish rooms. So I've done it quite a bit, whether it's a 20 long or a 20 high. It doesn't matter for a lot of these species. You kind of get pros and cons of each one, and I wouldn't say one is strictly better than the other. So I've got 5 ideas that have worked out pretty well for me. Now there's lots that I've done, and just because I've done it doesn't mean it worked out really well, and these are kind of more, I would say, like longer term setups, and not so much like, yeah, you could pull it off for a while, but then the colony gets too big and you're gonna run into these problems. And instead more like, yeah, these are fun, I gave them to friends, I was able to maybe trade a little bit in for some store credit, I had fun with them for a few years, and then if you only have 1 or 2 tanks, maybe you move on to playing with something else. Alright, first up, I've got something kind of a little bit more unique, and that would be mouth brooding bettas. And now the 2 that I've done and had success with would be the strawberry betta, or alba marginata, and betta pugnax. Now they look both different, they're both very peaceful and cool to keep, and they're not just like a normal betta where males and females are going to fight all the time. There is a little bit of aggression, but they're kind of set up to be that way. And in a 20-gallon, you can make things work. You want it densely planted, and you want lots of line of sight breaks, you want to feed well, and you can even have some dithers in this one, which is kind of nice, because if you have like lots of dense plants, you could have maybe some neons or something swimming out front to kind of break up that aggression, because when they're breeding, they're going to hold the eggs and basically the fry in their mouths, and then eventually they're going to go and spit them into the weeds. The thing you got to kind of watch out for if you're separating fry and you're letting them breed back to back, so like every week to 10 days they're breeding again, you can actually get the males, who are the ones that are going to hold most of the time there, they'll start getting skinny because they're spending all their time holding babies and not eating. So every once in a while you might want to, if you don't have multiple tanks, put one of them kind of in a timeout container. Maybe the female, who's most active and been eating the whole time, they kind of go into a miniature quarantine setup. The male gets time to eat and recuperate and all of that, and then maybe you're letting them breed that 2 or 3 times in a row, and then you give them a couple weeks off to build up fat and body mass, and you get better spawns out of them that way anyway. So you get that colony going, and if you're not careful, you've got 2 or 3 spawnings going. They're getting a little more territorial, so you just want to watch out and move babies on as it makes sense. Next up that I've done a ton, shrimp. Pick a shrimp, whether it's cherry shrimp or whether it's crystal shrimp, what's going to work for your water parameters. You can do Malawi shrimp, which are kind of a crazier one that not a lot of people keep. A couple tanks down, I've got some cardinal shrimp, which is a freshwater shrimp, and in general, nice planted tank. That being said, doesn't have to be planted at all. You could have an algae fest, and they thrive there too. They just want to eat kind of little bits of stuff, little bits of algae, little bits of bacteria, little bits of poop, if you will, mulm. They want to dig through it all and find the little tasties. And the more well-seasoned your tank is, the better that's going to be facilitated. Now, if you're running like a hang-on back filter, you want to get a sponge on that intake. We sell pre-filter sponges for that purpose. If you're running a sponge filter, no problem at all. If you're running an undergravel filter, no problem. If you really want a robust colony going, just do shrimp only and maybe a few snails. If you want just kind of a lively tank to be looking at, a lot of times you can mix in some very docile fish, like green neon tetras, something that stays a little smaller, celestial pearl danios, Brigitae rasboras, or the chili rasbora. All of those types of little things that have smaller mouths are going to lead to less shrimp eaten. I find that it's not enough to really inhibit it. Now if you get something way too zealous, like swordtails or a bigger fish, you could actually run into some problems there, and I don't recommend that. But I've also successfully done guppies. You just have to feed a lot of food and know that the more guppies you have, the more shrimp they're eating, so you'll produce less shrimp, you'll produce more guppies. We'll just spin right into that one. Guppies, they're one of my favorites in 20-gallon tanks. You can get quite a big colony going. I used to know a breeder that even in 10-gallon tanks could keep over 100 specimens in there, no problem, raise them up and sell them at a store and all of that. I like dealing with pure strains in the 20 gallons. If I'm doing just a big conglomerate of mixed guppies, I like bigger tanks just because I like to see all the colors. But in a specific 20-gallon, I pick a color strain, I work with it, I cull, if you will. I take out the ones that don't match the color or maybe don't have a trait I want. I had black Moscows for a very long time, and after a few years they started throwing albinos. And while it was cool, and I actually separated those off to play with them a little bit, I didn't want this black Moscow guppy to basically turn white because it loses the feature that it had, right? Still a Guppy fan. I don't have any 20s. I kind of wish I did right now. Mine are in 40-gallon breeders or in ponds, but you know, my starting was definitely lots of 10s and 20s with Guppies, and I still love them to this day. Next up, we've got white clouds. Now, white clouds, I've bred in ponds many times outside. I love kind of the white cloud race I did for my club where people would start with 6, see them, and they could breed over a summer because they're kind of an easy fish to breed. But I accidentally bred a ton of them when I just bought them as feeders. You know, they were like 5 for $1. I just wanted to get kind of the process going, and I thought it's going to take me a long time to find like all the guppies and stuff I wanted to breed at the time, and so I may as well let something be happening there. And really, I wanted to put fish food in so that fish would eat it and poop and then grow the plants. That's really what my goal was. But turns out, in most of them, I was getting babies. Like, where are those babies fish? And they looked like these little slivers, and they were actually white clouds. And so in most of the tanks, even though they didn't have a heater or anything like that, they were all breeding up a storm. And as long as you don't have snails, too many snails, other fish and things like that, they'll actually raise up with the parents. Now again, kind of like a lot of fish, the more fish you have, or the more juveniles that may have grown up and can prey on the eggs and the babies, the less you'll start hatching out more, you know, over time. But if you move those to other tanks, or you sell them off, or whatever you're going to do, you can keep a 20-gallon that's still kind of producing. And there's other things like cherry barbs are the same way. Like right now, a couple tanks down, actually, I have some gold longfin white clouds. So there's some different variants you can play with, longfin, different color forms. Yeah, I highly recommend them. And if I breed a bunch, I might actually start putting them with my turtles and stuff, because I love to watch them just swim around, and especially longfin, super cool. Next up, we've got desert gobies. Now, I haven't bred these in probably 10 years, but this was part of my trying to breed oddball fish. The start of my hobby, everything had to basically pay for itself. If I was going to go spend money on fish and set up a new tank, I basically had to breed the fish in my fish room to pay for that because I didn't have a lot of money. I researched and I was like, okay, I've been doing guppies, I've been doing shrimp, I've been doing African cichlids, I've been doing a bunch of this stuff, but what's something else that I could breed that might be kind of easy? And that came upon desert gobies. And I just saw we had some in the store lately. They're not the most colorful fish, but they have unique behavior, and to breed them is kind of cool. You use actually 1/2-inch PVC pipe, just a little section of it. They'll go inside, lay their eggs on the inside of it, they hatch out, then you got all these little things scooting around on the bottom of your tank. You're not going to build a huge colony of them. That's more like you kind of spawn them, and then you've got a bunch of babies, and then you probably raise some of those babies, you know, maybe half of them to a sellable size, and then you can repeat it. It's not going to be a production line like maybe guppies and shrimp would be, or even the more docile bettas, but it is a cool fish, and I think you get some clout for it at your local club or your store. Like, wow, you know, a lot of people can breed guppies and shrimp, but a goby, you don't see that every day. I don't really put them with a bunch else because once they come out, the babies get sniped by other stuff, and they've got kind of a big mouth on them, and they can get a little bit territorial to them. That being said, they can go in community tanks with other fish, just not that breeding scenario doesn't work out so well. So it was kind of a trip down memory lane of like, oh yeah, what else have I bred in 20s? And I still love 20-gallon aquariums, and it doesn't take very many of them to invest a lot of time and money and energy and have a whole lot of fun. If there's one thing I could tell people is, even though we have a fairly big facility now and I have a store and all of that, I still reminisce about days where you just have a limited amount of like, oh, I've got 5 aquariums and I'm doing all this fun stuff, and I'm, planning the next thing I'm gonna do. So if you're in that phase, you're kind of in that sweet spot, and enjoy it while you've got it.